a dove flew down from the sky and circled around the city of Jerusalem. It flies to the outskirts of the city, where hills and date trees stretch across the landscape. The dove lands on the roof of a house in a suburban area, home to the city's lower-class residents living in rows of shanty houses. From there, one crowded street teems with people, and the dove sat quietly on the roof of the house and watched them. Villagers gather in front of a house of death. Inside, an old man lies dead. The family mourns, crying in sorrow, while neighbors talk to each other with somber faces. Religious leaders perform the funeral rituals for the deceased. On the other side of the house, a group of young men is gathered and deep in discussion. One of them, who seems to be their leader, speaks passionately. He looks about 28 years old, a fiery young man, and goes by the name Barabbas. Our late leader, Barabbas, spent his entire life fighting for our rights. If someone from another race dies, except for Jews, they shouldn't be buried. Their bodies should be thrown off the mountain for the foxes and vultures to eat. But we shouldn't treat him the same way. We must give him a proper burial with respect. A bystander interjects, Barabbas, this act is against the Jews, and it will bring serious consequences. Barabbas said furiously, we've suffered enough. Now it's time to fight for our rights. Inspired by his words, one of the young men shouts, Barabbas is right. How long can we live without self-respect? Then, the group falls into tense silence. Barabbas and his friends enter the funeral home to visit their deceased relatives. Once the final prayer is over, Barabbas, who came with the youth, speaks to the gathered family members. Our leader spent his entire life fighting for our rights. Most importantly, when our people die, their bodies should not be thrown off a mountain. He fought to ensure that the government would give him a dignified burial, but they ignored his request. Now, peaceful protests will not work. It's time for us to fight in a new way, through violence. We will not throw our leader's body from the mountain. Instead, we will bury him in the land outside the town, he says angrily. A wave of murmurs runs through the crowd. Many people are looking at each other's faces, and the deceased's relatives begin talking among themselves. One man looked at Barabbas and said fearfully, if we go against the government, we'll all be killed. Barabbas glared at him and replied with fire in his voice, better to live one day as a hero than 100 years as a coward. The crowd murmured, some supporting Barabbas, others against him. Barabbas stepped forward and approached the fallen leader's wife and asked gently, what should we do? She looked at him with sadness and whispered, bury him. Barabbas smiled fiercely and shouted, you heard her. Lift the leader's body. We will bury him with honor. The young men stepped forward, gently lifted the leader's body. Together, they carried it in a solemn procession, followed by the villagers and the leader's grieving family. The villagers dig a grave to bury a body far from town. In the distance, a group of Jewish soldiers approaches quickly on horseback. Fear spreads among the villagers near the burial site. The soldiers surround the body and the grieving relatives. Their commander dismounts and glares at them. What is this? You're not allowed to bury him here, he shouts. Barabbas steps forward and asks, we can't live freely in this land, but do we not even have the right to bury our dead? The commander sneers. Rights? Only Jews have rights, not to slave people like you. Lift the body and throw it from the mountain. Barabbas, furious, replies, we won't let our dead become food for dogs and foxes. We will bury him here. The commander's face darkens with rage and turns to his soldiers. Beat them and drive them away, he orders. The soldiers charge forward on their horses, whipping and scattering the villagers. The crowd begins to scatter. Barabbas grabs a soldier whip and pulls him to the ground. Seeing this, the other two soldiers start beating Barabbas with their whips. The fallen soldier lashes out at Barabbas in anger. Villagers run away in fear. A dead body lies alone near the burial ground, like an orphan. A few frightened relatives stand at a distance. The commander approaches them angrily. and says, "Go, lift the body." Reluctantly, they go and lift the body, followed by soldiers. Scattered villagers follow them from a distance. People in a procession reach the top of the mountain and throw the body over the edge. The carrion-eating vulture perched on the mountain treetops soared down to the valley below, where the body lay. A rugged mountain path is crowded with people. Some ride donkeys, while others walk. Barabbas is seen walking in the distance. Along the path, many are crucified, their bodies hanging on crosses. Barabbas glances back as he walks away. Nearby, Jewish soldiers drag a man forward. Behind them, a cart carries a cross. He pleads with the soldiers, "I am innocent. I have done nothing wrong. They've sentenced me to death. Justice is dead in the land of the Jews. Let me go." The soldiers beat and kick the man as they drag him forward. The crowd watches in silence. Barabbas stops and watches, his face filled with pity. He stares until the carriage disappears. Then, with a heavy heart, Barabbas turns and continues walking up the path.